Pretty much everyone and their mother is familiar with the legendary tale of King Henry VIII and his 6 wives, a frenzied search for a male heir that led to one of the most significant religious transformations in Western history, the founding of the Church of England. But what you probably don't know is that there is one aristocratic family, still holding sway at the very top of British nobility, that fielded not one, but 2 of Henry VIII's wives. Indeed, this old money dynasty has held power for so long that their noble title was created by none other than Richard III, that infamous king immortalized more than a century later in the work of William Shakespeare, with titles and estates that have weathered the tumults of English history. From the Wars of the Roses to the present day, the Howard family, Dukes of Norfolk, have not only survived the caprices of fortune, but have managed to remain at the forefront of the aristocracy. In today's episode, we'll give you the full goss on this dynasty, the #1 title in the hierarchy of British nobles who aren't royals themselves, as we describe, the Howard family, Dukes of Norfolk, the most prestigious British aristocrats. Edward FitzAlan Howard, the 18th Duke of Norfolk, could be forgiven for believing that blue blood runs slightly bluer in his veins than in those of his noble compatriots, because, as England's Premier Duke in 2024, he stands atop the upper crust of the British aristocracy, a position of such elevated prestige that even the Queen might find occasion to nod approvingly in his direction. But let's not be coy. Being the Duke of Norfolk isn't just a title. It's an entire existence of opulence, political clout, and ceremonious duties that would send lesser men scurrying for the shires. Thus, as the Premier Duke, he is perched at the pinnacle of the non-royal pyramid, making every other duke in the realm tilt their coronets in deference. And the title of Earl Marshal isn't merely an honorific passed down through family dinner stories, but a key to the executive washroom of state ceremonies, organising anything from the state opening of Parliament to the coronation of monarchs falls under his remit. It's a job that involves less of the daily grind and more of the gilt-edged splendour, overseeing the College of Arms, the arbiters of heraldry across the kingdom, and presiding over the court of chivalry when one noble feels another has impugned his coat of arms in a particularly unsporting manner. And the Duke's pockets are deep, filled not just with loose change, but with assets sprawling from the luscious lands along the Thames to the regal reaches of Sussex. These plots and properties haven't just bolstered their bank balance over the centuries, but anchored their aristocratic relevance in a world where titles are less revered than TikTok followers. Now, his primary residence, Arundel Castle, is not so much a home as it is a monumental testimonial to historical endurance and architectural magnificence. It's a castle that doesn't just house a family, but encapsulates a lineage, complete with sprawling gardens and ancestral echoes in every hall that isn't a corridor. And the Duke's property portfolio extends further afield to Kenninghall Place, a shadow of its former self perhaps, but still a significant chunk of the family's sprawling estate. Furthermore, family life for the Duke is as woven into his aristocratic duties as the very threads of his bespoke tailoring. Married once to Georgina Susan Gore, the partnership produced 5 heirs to the Howard legacy before marital storms saw them part ways, only to retie the knot later with Francesca Herbert. It's a personal life that could rival any Shakespearean drama, which, as you'll see in a minute, is exactly what the Howard family is known for, as they've been ruling since even before the bard Billy Shakespeare was putting quill to paper. However, before we get the Elizabethan drama, let's give you the 30,000-foot view of exactly how the Howard family got so much clout, as the kids say, on our lovely island of Albion. Now, the Dukedom of Norfolk itself holds a venerable spot as the oldest existing dukedom in England's peerage system, its hierarchy of aristocrats, when the role was established way back in 1483 by King Richard III. But why exactly does the title Duke of Norfolk stand out above the many other fancy names in British nobility? Besides its age, it holds a top spot in the order of precedence. That's essentially a hierarchical list used at formal events, placing the Duke of Norfolk right up there as the Premier Duke, the highest rank below the royal family. And the title comes bundled with the role of the Earl Marshal, a fancy title that involves organizing major ceremonial occasions like coronations and state openings of Parliament. Now, King Richard III, the man who granted John Howard the dukedom in 1483, is a figure shrouded in intrigue and drama. In 1483, he didn't just grab the crown, he wrapped himself in a permanent controversy by deposing his young nephew, Edward V, and his younger brother Richard, Duke of York. These boys, better known as the Princes in the Tower, vanished without a trace, presumed murdered, but the chilling suspicion is that their dear Uncle Richard ordered their deaths to clear his path to undisputed rule. Thus, this scandal is more than just a footnote in history. It's the linchpin of Richard III's legacy, turning his story into a mystery that has puzzled scholars, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike. William Shakespeare himself further spiced up Richard's image, portraying him as a scheming, malevolent character in his play Richard III. Through Shakespeare's lens, Richard is the ultimate villain, whose ambition is so vast it includes the cold-blooded murder of his own nephews. While modern historians debate the accuracy of this portrayal, suggesting it was likely exaggerated to favour the ruling Tudors, the tale has cemented Richard as a legendary figure in the annals of English royalty. Therefore, ever since our Shakespearean overlord Richard III bestowed this title, our Howard family has wielded its power, bringing to life the pages of both history and literature. However, the intriguing aspects of the Howard family's past don't stop at the bard's fanciful creations. One of the more colourful claims of the Howard family is their supposed descent from Hereward the Wake, an Anglo-Saxon nobleman who became something of a folk hero, especially known for his resistance against Norman invaders. Thus, while many of the British aristocracy claim direct Norman lineage from William the Conqueror and his compatriots, the Dukes of Norfolk have opted to align their past with the proper English history of nearly 1,000 years of Anglo-Saxon heritage. Now, this rebel leader they claim is their ancestor, Hereward the Wake, made his mark around the year 1070 by staunchly opposing William the Conqueror during the Norman conquest of England. Specifically, Hereward's resistance is famously centred in the marshy fenlands of East Anglia, an area that provided a natural fortress against invasion. And while his story has been embellished over centuries, it has grown into a symbol of English defiance and endurance against foreign domination. But Hereward's tale isn't just a footnote in history books. It's been romanticised in numerous novels and is seen as part of the fabric of Anglo-Saxon culture within England. In fact, his role as a resister has arguably made him the literary basis for legendary figures as far afield as Robin Hood himself. But perhaps the most significant literary tribute to him is Charles Kingsley's 1866 novel, Hereward the Wake, Last of the English, which casts him as a noble warrior battling against the Norman encroachment, a sort of early-day freedom fighter. Yet, a less mythical but documented lineage for the Howard family is provided by a pedigree signed by Sir William Dugdale, Norroy King of Arms in 1665. This record traces the family's origins to the Haworth family of Great Haworth Hall in Rochdale, starting with Osbert Howard de Haworth, who was granted lands for his role as master of King Henry I's buckhounds. This assertion places the Howards' roots in a more verifiable historical context, away from the mists of legend and into the ledgers of service to the crown. However, the Dukes of Norfolk are far more remembered for their involvement in the religious history of the British Isles, rather than simply the specificities of their ethnic heritage. Thus, in the next chapter, we'll bring you up to speed on how the beneficiaries of Richard III's title offering helped sculpt the unique spiritual hierarchy of the modern United Kingdom. The Howard family saga is deeply intertwined with the religious and political upheavals of Britain's history, particularly during the English Reformation, when England dramatically split from Roman Catholicism under King Henry VIII. The Howards, as recusants, remained steadfast in their Catholic faith despite significant consequences, including exclusion from the House of Lords, and their religious stance consequently often marginalised them within England's power structures. However, the Howard family's connection to the Tudor court is further highlighted through two of Henry VIII's wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. both of whom were direct descendants of the Howard line. Specifically, Anne Boleyn, Henry's second wife, was the niece of Thomas Howard, the third Duke of Norfolk, while Catherine Howard, Henry's fifth wife, was the Duke's granddaughter. Therefore, along with their ties to William Shakespeare and a possible William the Conqueror connection, the Howard family is directly involved in the history of Henry VIII and his infamous marital issues. We'll call it that. Then, during the tumultuous times of the English Reformation, the Howard family emerged as one of the most prominent recusant families, steadfastly clinging to their Roman Catholic beliefs despite the prevailing Protestant rule. One of the most striking examples of their plight is Thomas Howard, the fourth Duke of Norfolk, who met a grim fate in 1572 when he was executed for his role in the Ridolfi plot. This conspiracy aimed to dethrone Elizabeth I and crown Mary, Queen of Scots, thereby reinstating Catholicism as the state religion. And Philip Howard, the 13th Earl of Arundel, further embodies the family's tribulations. He was confined in the Tower of London solely for his Catholic faith, where he ultimately died in 1595, and his steadfastness in faith led to his eventual canonization as a saint. Despite these hardships, the Howards displayed remarkable resilience and adaptability, eventually regaining their noble titles and estates. The restoration of the Dukedom of Norfolk in 1660 marked their re-established prominence, with branches like the Earls of Suffolk, Carlisle, and Effingham maintaining their aristocratic standing. Now, the early 1700s saw Britain rife with religious and political strife, especially concerning the rights of Roman Catholics. The Glorious Revolution of 1689, which ousted the Catholic King James II in favour of the Protestant William III, intensified anti-Catholic sentiments. This was crystallised by the Act of Settlement in 1701, which barred Catholics from the throne, fuelled by fears that Catholics were more loyal to the Pope than to the British Crown. During this era, penal laws severely curtailed Catholics' rights to own property, hold office, and openly practice their faith, aimed at entrenching Protestant hegemony and quashing any potential Catholic resurgence. Amid these challenges, Charles Howard, the 11th Duke of Norfolk, emerged as a pivotal figure. Born into the Catholic faith in 1746, Howard renounced Catholicism in 1780 to pursue political ambitions, navigating the restrictive landscape that barred Catholics from significant public roles. By converting to Anglicanism, he secured a seat in Parliament as the MP for Carlisle, and later held a position as a Lord of the Treasury under the Rockingham administration. Yet, despite his religious conversion, Howard continued to champion Catholic emancipation, showcasing his complex stance on religious tolerance. And while he was a firm supporter of King George III and aligned with the Conservative Tory party, yet his career was peppered with progressive stances on issues like parliamentary reform and opposition to the slave trade. In stark contrast to his father, Henry Howard, the 12th Duke of Norfolk, was a devout Roman Catholic whose life and career were deeply influenced by the Catholic Emancipation Act of 1829. This pivotal legislation, championed by figures like Daniel O'Connell, finally allowed Catholics to sit in Parliament and hold public office, reflecting a significant shift in public sentiment. Henry Howard made history by becoming the first Catholic to take his seat in Parliament as the MP for Horsham shortly after the Act's passage, serving from 1829 to 1832. And Henry's political influence extended beyond his parliamentary duties. He was appointed a Privy Councillor, served as Treasurer of the Household, and played a key role in the coronation of Queen Victoria in 1838 as Earl Marshal. His dedication to Catholic causes, through support of charities and educational institutions, thus revitalised the Howard family's standing in British society and bringing them into the modern era, so to speak. Yet, the Dukes of Norfolk had one more aristocratic masterstroke to take, as they would meld in the 19th century with another noble family and increase their power even further, which is where we'll pick up the next chapter. By the mid-19th century, the Howard family had cemented their place as one of England's most prestigious noble families, linking arms with the illustrious FitzAlan lineage. This storied connection began when the Howards intermarried with the FitzAlans, whose roots stretch back to Alan FitzFlad, a knight from Brittany who journeyed to England with King Henry III. And the FitzAlans famously held the earldom of Arundel from 1267, a period marked by their considerable influence in medieval politics and society. Now, this powerful bond between the two families was particularly strengthened in the 16th century, when Thomas Howard, the 4th Duke of Norfolk, wed Mary FitzAlan, daughter of Henry FitzAlan, the 12th Earl of Arundel. This union not only melded two noble lineages, but also transferred the sprawling Arundel estates to the Howard family. The subsequent generations acknowledged this melded heritage by adopting the hyphenated surname FitzAlan Howard, a nod to their dual ancestry. For example, Henry Granville FitzAlan Howard, who became the 14th Duke of Norfolk in 1842, is a prime example of the family's enduring legacy and their knack for staying relevant. Upon inheriting the title, he and his siblings officially took on the FitzAlan Howard surname by royal decree, underscoring their deep ties to both the Howard and FitzAlan legacies and their ancestral stronghold, Arundel Castle. As a figure of considerable stature, the 14th Duke held the traditional role of Earl Marshal and was the last to claim the title of Chief Butler of England, a ceremonial dignity from times long past. His influence extended into the political arena, where he served as a Member of Parliament for multiple constituencies and wielded significant influence in the House of Lords. Transitioning into the 20th century, the Dukes of Norfolk faced a world vastly different from the medieval or Victorian eras, and they adapted to changing societal norms and economic landscapes, balancing the preservation of tradition with necessary modernization. Henry FitzAlan Howard, the 15th Duke, exemplified this balance during his tenure from 1847 to 1917. He presided over important state ceremonies, including royal funerals and coronations, which underscored the family's ceremonial importance in national affairs. And his engagement extended beyond royal duties into active participation in conservative politics and civic responsibilities, like serving as Mayor of Sheffield and then Westminster. Following in his father's footsteps, Bernard Marmaduke FitzAlan Howard, the 16th Duke, embodied the family's martial spirit. His valor in World War II earned him the Military Cross. Post-war, his focus shifted to the preservation and restoration of Arundel Castle, ensuring the family's historical seat remained intact for future generations. Then, Miles Francis Stapleton FitzAlan Howard, the 17th Duke of Norfolk, inherited his title in 1975, stepping into a role that had significantly evolved over the centuries. Faced with the daunting task of modernizing the family's estates, he introduced innovative strategies to diversify their agricultural and commercial ventures. One key initiative was opening the legendary Arundel Castle to the public, a savvy business move that not only provided a new stream of income, but also allowed the public to connect with aristocratic history in a tangible way. Now, Edward William FitzAlan Howard, his son and the current Duke, took over as the 18th Duke of Norfolk in 2002. He continued to build on his father's legacy, especially in his role as Earl Marshal, a position that involves overseeing major national ceremonies in the UK. This role put him at the forefront of organising and managing grand state events like the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022 and the coronation of King Charles III in 2023. But his son, and the heir apparent, has sufficiently deviated from aristocratic norms for us to take note of. Henry Miles FitzAlan Howard, Earl of Arundel, known professionally as Henry Arundel, was born in 1987 to Edward and his wife, Georgina Gore. Raised in the spotlight of aristocracy, Henry pursued higher education at the University of Bristol, earning a degree in economics in 2010, and his career took him into the realms of private equity and corporate finance, where he worked for prestigious firms in London. By 2019, he had co-founded Noble Insurance Group, stepping into a significant leadership role as managing director. More intriguingly, however, Henry's earlier years also featured a notable stint in motorsports. He raced under the name Henry Arundel, participating in competitions such as the Formula BMW UK Championship, where he notably won the Rookie Cup in 2006, and he continued racing in various series, accumulating successes and experience that highlighted his competitive spirit and drive. In 2016, he married Cecilia Mary Elizabeth dei Conti Colacicci, a noblewoman with deep familial roots in Italian aristocracy, in a ceremony held at Arundel Cathedral. Together they have 3 daughters, marking the next generation of the FitzAlan-Howard lineage, and adding a dash of Italian flavour to the history of the legendary dynasty. And now, we'd love to see you in the comments. Which aristocratic British family would you like us to feature next on this channel? We can't wait to hear from you, and thanks again for joining us for another episode of Old Money Luxury. Cheers until next time.